My next guest is the former Deputy Assistant Undersecretary of the Air Force for International Affairs and is now running for U.S. Senate in Maryland, General John Teichert. Thank you for joining us.
Andrew, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, I raked you over the coals on my radio show, and we'll get to that. But I do want to, you're a combat pilot, among other things. I just wanted to get your take on what's going on with Hamas and Israel. I would have to imagine that, without a doubt, unequivocally, Israel owns the skies.
They do own the skies. They are such an extremely capable fighting force, especially their Air Force. And just in the last few days, I've been talking to some of my senior fighter pilot friends over in Israel. And of course, it's heart-wrenching for them, but they are ready to do what their country needs them to do to own their right of self-defense against Hamas.
What do you do, and the U.S. has faced this not just in Israel and other theaters, what do you do when the enemy is hiding in a civilian population? I realize that with technology and the amazing skill of pilots, you could pretty much surgically take out a target, but Hamas is literally using human shields.
No, Andrew, they literally are, and it just goes back to the moral bankruptcy of those that support Hamas, like we've seen on college campuses and even in the halls of Congress, that not only did they execute barbarism as they attacked Israel, but then they bring back hostages that are women and babies and children and the elderly. But now they hide behind Palestinians that are also elderly and young people. And it really is just heartbreaking to consider how they demonstrate their lack of ability to have rightful rule in Gaza every single day, and especially during this last week and a half of their barbarism.
I asked you on my radio program, so I want to kind of skip this part about cutting the spending. You said you were a vote to cut the spending, the actual spending, not proposed spending. But are we at the point where we can no longer say there's going to be a blank check for foreign nations, and that includes Israel's, as hard as that is to say? We've said that about Ukraine. I want to be consistent, but with $33 trillion in debt, the United States cannot offer blank checks in perpetuity to foreign governments. We can't afford it.
Andrew, as we look at our foreign military and international stance, we need to make some tough choices. Ultimately, by the way, one of those tough choices was pulling out of Afghanistan, and we've seen how that has now led to at least the attack by Russia in Ukraine, and now likely an Iranian-supported attack against Israel. So as we make those priority choices, we've got to be extremely clear about the ramifications of any appeasement or weakness we demonstrate is going to invite attack and make the world a more dangerous place.
You're an MIT guy. The Iran nuclear deal, it was originally opposed by Chuck Schumer under the Obama. He only came to support it after Trump became president, but Chuck Schumer worried that they would not live up to the tenets of the agreement, that they would enrich uranium, that they would, in fact, build a bomb. And this has been the cause of the people behind Joe Biden. It was a cause of the Obama administration. Now he just released $6 billion to the Iranian, or the equivalent of $6 billion. Maybe we should stop giving Iran whatever it wants, and maybe the Senate ought to reclaim its treaty-making power.
Andrew, you are spot on that the only thing that regimes like Iran understand is strength, power, will, and resolve. And this administration has shown none of those things. In fact, I was the senior defense official to Iraq during the changeover of administrations between Trump and Biden. And you could sense in the atmosphere of Iraq that those Iranian-aligned militia groups were salivating at the idea of American weakness. And as we consider appeasement and weakness to Iran, every time we consider it, including with the nuclear deal, it emboldens them and again makes the world a more dangerous place.
Constitutional questions. I was kind of leading. The president doesn't have the power to make executive agreements, the Paris Climate Accord, the Iran nuclear deal, but the Senate has kind of stood down as the State Department has kind of got into the business. We don't officially call them treaties. We call them executive agreements, whatever name they have for them. I remember when Tom Cotton, put a letter on his Senate website saying to the Iranians, hey, this dies with this administration. This is not how our system of government works. They said he was violating the Logan Act or something. But I think the Senate has to loudly reclaim its power to make treaties. It is not up to the executive branch to bind the United States.
Andrew, that the Senate needs to take back their authority exactly in the way that you just described. And it means two things. Number one, it means that we need national security expertise in the U.S. Senate. And number two, that we, the people, need to demand that the Senate lives up to their constitutional responsibility, ultimately in the foreign policy realm, instead of abdicating that responsibility to the executive branch.
How is it that the United States is willing to send unlimited resources to secure the borders of foreign nations, but military-age males are pouring into our country by the tens of thousands per month?
Andrew, you're spot on that there's this multifaceted crisis going on our own southern border. Number one, it's a national security crisis. That if we don't know who's coming across the border, then very likely we are seeing foreign terrorist actors, including members of Hamas, pour across our southern border. It's a public safety crisis that hardened criminals are also crossing that same border. So is Chinese-made fentanyl as it now spreads throughout the streets of the United States and is killing our young people. And it's a humanitarian crisis. We need a leader in the White House and leaders in Congress that ultimately realize that in order to be a sovereign nation, we need to secure our borders. And right now, we are not doing so.
I agree with you. We'll be talking to you many times, I'm sure, during this campaign, but I got to leave it there. Thanks for joining us.